Commander Thera lifted her drink with one of her forearms. The other aliens around the table leaned closer. The tavern was dark and smoky, perfect for telling old war stories. You want to know about humans? Thera's voice was low and rough. I fought them for 3 years. I'll tell you what I learned. She took a long drink. Her chitinous armor clicked as she moved. 15 years ago, I was young. Stupid. I thought the Keth were the best warriors in the galaxy. The hegemony told us humans were weak, primitive. They had barely learned to travel between stars. The other soldiers nodded. They had heard similar stories about their own first battles. My first mission was New Harmony. A human colony world. Small planet. Maybe 2 million humans. The hegemony wanted to add it to our territory. Standard procedure. Thera's eyes grew distant. She was remembering. We came with 12 ships, heavy cruisers. The humans had maybe 6 old cargo ships with weapons bolted on. We laughed. This would be easy. A Vorthan soldier leaned forward. What happened? We did what we always did. Orbital bombardment first. Take out their military bases, their communications, their spaceports. Then, land troops to accept surrender. Thera paused. Her drink trembled slightly in her grip. The bombardment worked perfectly. Their defenses went dark. No more signals from the surface. We waited 3 hours, then sent down the landing ships. She set down her drink and looked at each face around the table. I was in the first wave. 500 Keth warriors. The best of the best. We landed outside their main city, expected to find ruins and crying humans begging for mercy. But, asked a Zilani officer, but the humans were waiting for us. Not with weapons. They came out with white flags, hands up, children crying, old ones begging us not to hurt them. The aliens around the table looked confused. This sounded normal. My commander was pleased. Easy victory. He ordered the humans to gather in the city square. They obeyed. All of them. 200,000 humans. Standing quietly in neat groups. Thera's voice dropped lower. That should have been our first warning. They were too calm, too organized. When you bomb someone's world, they don't line up nicely. They panic. They run. They fight back or break down crying. She picked up her drink again but didn't drink. These humans just watched us. Quiet. Patient. Like they were waiting for something. The children were the worst. Human children are small, soft-looking. But these ones weren't scared. They looked at us with old eyes. Like they knew something we didn't. A Keth soldier shifted uncomfortably. What did you do? Standard procedure. We set up a command post in their government building, posted guards around the square, started processing the humans for transport to work camps. Thera finally took another drink. That's when they hit us. The tavern went very quiet. It started small. A guard would disappear. We'd find him later, dead. No wounds we could see. Then our communications started failing. Equipment breaking down. Vehicles wouldn't start. She counted on her fingers. Day 2, we lost contact with 3 patrol units. Day 3, our command post lost power. Day 4, someone poisoned our water supply. Half my unit got sick. The humans in the square never moved. Still standing there. Still quiet. Still watching. But somehow, impossible things were happening all around us. Thera's voice became angry. We tried everything. Took hostages. Threatened to kill the children. The humans just looked at us. No fear. No anger. Just patience. By day 6, we had lost 50 warriors. The humans had lost 0. 0. They were right there in front of us. But we couldn't touch them. She slammed her drink down. The other aliens jumped. That's when I figured it out. Those humans in the square? They weren't prisoners. They were volunteers. The real population had evacuated days before we arrived. These ones stayed behind to keep us busy. The whole colony was a trap. Every building, every street, every room. They had been preparing for months, studying our tactics, learning our weaknesses. Zixthara stood up and began pacing. While we watched 200,000 humans standing in that square, the real defenders were invisible, moving through tunnels under our feet, using buildings we thought were empty, striking and vanishing like ghosts. The humans had monitored our communications for months before we arrived. They knew exactly when we were coming, how many ships, what weapons we carried. They evacuated everyone, except the volunteers. She sat back down heavily. The volunteers knew they were going to die, all of them. But they did it anyway, to protect their people, to hurt us as much as possible before the end. We called for reinforcements. More ships came. The pattern repeated. More humans volunteering to die. More of our warriors disappearing. More equipment failing. Zixthara looked each alien in the eye. After 2 weeks, the hegemony pulled us out. We lost 300 warriors. The humans lost maybe 1,000 volunteers. But New Harmony was still free. She picked up her drink with a shaking hand. That was my first lesson about humans. They don't surrender. Even when they raise white flags and stand in neat lines, they're not surrendering. They're planning. The tavern was silent, except for the sound of alien breathing. The quiet ones are the most dangerous. When a human goes quiet, it doesn't mean they've given up. It means they're thinking. And when humans think, she shuddered. That's when you should be afraid. Zixthara finished her drink in one gulp. That was just the beginning. I have 4 more stories to tell you, each one worse than the last. Zixthara ordered another drink. The other aliens waited. Her first story had shaken them. Now they wanted to hear more, but also feared it. The second time I met humans was worse, she said. Much worse. She stared into her glass. 6 months after New Harmony, I was assigned to Deep Space Patrol. Quiet work. Looking for pirates and smugglers. Good duty after what happened on the colony. 1. The alien soldiers nodded. They understood needing quiet time after bad battles. My ship picked up a distress signal. Human vessel called the Endurance. Research ship. They were stuck in the Crimson Nebula. Engines dead. Life support failing. Zixthara's voice was flat. Emotionless. Protocol said ignore human distress calls. But my captain was old school. Honorable. He said warriors help those in danger, even enemies. She laughed bitterly. Honorable. What a fool. We found the Endurance drifting in the nebula's edge. Big ship. Designed for long missions. No weapons we could see. They answered our hails immediately. Zixthara stood and began pacing again. The human captain sounded desperate. Said they had engine failure during a research mission. Radiation leak from their power core. 200 crew members dying slowly from poisoning. They begged us for help, medical aid, maybe evacuation to the nearest station. Said they would surrender completely if we just saved their people. She stopped pacing and looked at the other aliens. Have you ever heard someone dying from radiation poisoning? It's horrible, slow, painful. The humans on that ship were crying, begging. Some were already unconscious. A Zilani officer shifted uncomfortably. You helped them? My captain ordered a boarding party. Medical team included. I led 20 warriors aboard their ship. Zixthara sat down heavily. The smell hit us first. Sickness. Death. Fear. Human fear smells different from ours. Sharper. More desperate. The ship was dark. Emergency lighting only. Humans were everywhere. Lying in corridors. Slumped against walls. All of them sick. All of them dying. She closed her eyes. They were grateful when they saw us, crying with relief, thanking us in their strange language, reaching out with weak hands to touch our armor. Our medical officer, Krental, started treating them immediately. Good soldier. Better doctor. He said the radiation damage was severe, but treatable if we acted fast. Zixthara opened her eyes. They were hard and cold. We worked for 6 hours, moving the sickest humans to our ship's medical bay, giving them medicine, sharing our food and water. The human captain kept thanking us, said we were saving his people. The tavern was completely silent. That's when I noticed something wrong. The humans were sick. Yes. Dying. Yes. But their eyes. She shuddered. Their eyes were calm, peaceful, like they had made peace with death. I've seen radiation poisoning before. The victims are always terrified, desperate. These humans seemed accepting, ready. She picked up her drink but set it down without drinking. I found the human captain in his quarters. He was barely alive, but still conscious. I asked him why his people seemed so calm about dying. Zixthara's voice dropped to a whisper. He smiled. Actually, smiled. With his last breath, he said, "Because we're not dying for nothing." Forning. That's when the explosion started. The other aliens jerked back in their chairs. Nuclear charges, hidden all through their ship. The humans had rigged their own vessel to explode. But not right away. They waited until our boarding party was aboard. Until our ships were connected. The Endurance blew apart like a star going nova. Took our medical bay with it. Killed everyone we had rescued, plus our entire medical team. Zixthara stood again, her 4 hands clenched into fists. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing the truth. Those humans weren't dying from accidental radiation poisoning. She turned to face the other aliens directly. They had poisoned themselves, on purpose. Deliberately exposed their own people to radiation from their ship's core. 200 humans volunteering to die slowly and painfully, just to make their trap believable. A Vorthan soldier made a choking sound. They killed their own people? No. Zixthara said quietly. Those people killed themselves. For their species. For their cause. They spent weeks dying in agony, to make sure we would believe their distress call. She sat back down. We lost the Endurance immediately, but the explosion damaged our engines too. We barely escaped the nebula. While we limped back to base, we got more distress calls. 7 more human ships, all with the same story: engine failure, radiation poisoning, desperate crews begging for help. Zixthara looked around the table. Other hegemony ships responded. Good captains, honorable warriors. They wanted to help dying people. She finished her drink in one gulp. 12 hegemony vessels lost in 3 days. Thousands of warriors dead. All because humans were willing to poison their own people, to make a lie believable. The tavern was so quiet they could hear the air recycling systems humming. That was my second lesson about humans. They don't just use their enemy's honor against them. They'll sacrifice anything, including themselves, to win. Pain doesn't stop them. Death doesn't stop them. They'll turn their own suffering into a weapon. Zixthara stared at her empty glass. After that, the hegemony stopped responding to human distress calls. We learned not to trust human tears, human pain, human desperation. She looked up at the other aliens with haunted eyes. But the humans learned too. They learned that we had stopped helping them, and that taught them something important about us. What? Asked a Keth soldier. That we could be trained. Like animals. They showed us pain. We avoided it. They showed us death. We ran from it. Zixthara stood to get another drink. Humans don't avoid pain. They study it, master it, use it. And once they learned they could train us with our own fear. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The other aliens understood. The humans had started to hunt. Zixthera returned with a full bottle instead of just one drink. Her hands were shaking slightly as she poured. "The third story is the worst," she said. "It still gives me nightmares." The other aliens leaned back instinctively. They were beginning to understand that human warfare was unlike anything they had experienced. 1 year into the war, we besieged New Geneva, massive city on Kepler 442b. 50 million humans living in a single arcology that stretched from ground to sky. She took a long drink. The siege lasted 8 months. Block by block, floor by floor. We took the city. Street fighting. Brutal work. But we were winning. Zixthara stared at the bottle. By the end, we controlled 90% of New Geneva. Only one district held out. Agricultural District 7. Food production area. Greenhouses and farms to feed the arcology. My commander assigned me to take it. Full battalion. 400 Keth warriors. Against one district of farmers. She laughed. But there was no humor in it. Should have been easy. Farmers aren't soldiers. They grow plants. They don't fight wars. The aliens around the table waited. They were learning that when humans were involved, nothing was easy. We surrounded District 7, scanned it with every sensor we had. The readings were strange. Life signs everywhere. But only one human heat signature. Just one. We tried to contact the district. Demanded surrender. A human voice answered over the communication system. Calm. Polite. Speaking perfect Keth language. Zixthara poured another drink. He said his name was Marcus Chen. He was the district's head botanist. Everyone else had evacuated, but he had stayed behind to tend his gardens. My soldiers laughed. A plant tender. 1 man against 400 warriors. I ordered the advance. She stopped talking for a long moment. That was 6 weeks ago. A Zelani officer blinked. 6 weeks? How long did it take you to capture one farmer? We never captured him. Zixthara's voice was barely audible. We never even saw him. She stood and began pacing again. District 7 was a maze. Greenhouse domes connected by walkways, hydroponic farms stretching deep underground, miles of irrigation pipes and growing chambers. Chen knew every inch of it. Every plant, every pipe, every shadow. It was his world. And we were invaders. She stopped pacing. The first squad that entered the district just disappeared. 20 warriors. Gone. We found them 3 days later in a compost chamber. Buried under rotting vegetables. No weapons wounds. No signs of struggle. Chen had used some kind of plant toxin. Something that knocked them unconscious first, then killed them slowly. Zixthara sat down heavily. Over the speakers, Chen apologized. Said he was sorry for their deaths, but he couldn't let us reach the children. Children? Asked a Vorthan soldier. Underground, thousands of human children hiding in the deep growing chambers. Chen was protecting them. She took another drink. We tried everything. Sent in smaller teams. They vanished. Sent in larger groups. Same result. Used robots and drones. Chen disabled them with electromagnetic pulse devices he'd built from irrigation control systems. Every day, more of my warriors disappeared. And every day, Chen spoke to us over the speakers. Zixthara's voice became bitter. He explained his tactics, how he turned fertilizer into explosives, how he modified plant growth accelerators into acid sprayers, how he used greenhouse heating systems as flamethrowers. He turned the entire district into a living weapon. Every plant was a sensor. Every water pipe was a potential trap. Every growing chamber was a killing field. She looked around the table. But the worst part wasn't the deaths. It was Chen himself. "What do you mean?" asked a Keth soldier. He talked to us, every day. Like we were students in his class. He told us about his plants, his research, his life before the war. Zixthara's voice cracked. He had children. 2 daughters. 7 and 9 years old. They were in the underground chambers with the other kids. He showed us pictures. Chen wasn't a soldier. Wasn't a warrior. He was a scientist who studied plant genetics. Quiet man. Gentle man. His research had helped feed millions of people across human space. Chen wasn't a soldier. Chen wasn't a soldier. Gentle man. She stood again, agitated. And this gentle plant scientist killed 47 of my best warriors with garden tools and fertilizer. The tavern was silent except for Zixthara's heavy breathing. After 6 weeks, my commander ordered me to retreat. We couldn't afford to lose any more soldiers to one human. As we pulled back, Chen spoke to us one last time. He thanked us for our patience. Said he hoped we could meet again under better circumstances. Said he would pray for the souls of the warriors he had killed. Zixthara sat down and buried her face in her hands. Prayer. He prayed for the people he killed. What kind of mind does that? Kills you with one hand and blesses your soul with the other? She looked up with haunted eyes. 3 months later, we finally broke the siege. New Geneva fell. When we reached District 7, we found Chen in his office. Dead. Heart attack. Natural causes. Around him were thousands of files. Research notes. Every plant in the district catalogued. Every trap he had built documented. Every trick he had used explained in detail. Zixthara's voice became a whisper. And a letter. For whoever found him. It said he was sorry for the war. Sorry for the deaths. He hoped his research could someday help feed both humans and aliens in peace. She finished her drink. The children were safe. All of them. Hidden deep underground in growing chambers that Chen had turned into shelters. They had enough food and water for months. Clean air. Safe sleeping areas. He had protected them all. One man. A plant tender. Held off a battalion for 6 weeks, using nothing but his knowledge of farming. Because he had something to protect. Zixthara looked around the table. That was my 3rd lesson about humans. They're not warriors by nature. They're protectors. But when something threatens what they protect, they become the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. She poured another drink with shaking hands. And the things they protect. It's not just their own people. Chen died protecting children who weren't his. Humans he barely knew. He could have evacuated with everyone else. Instead, he stayed. And died. For children. The other aliens sat in stunned silence. I still dream about Chen's voice. Calm. Patient. Educational. Teaching me about plants while he killed my warriors. Apologizing for their deaths while he planned the next trap. Zixthara raised her glass in a mock toast. To Marcus Chen. The most terrifying farmer in the galaxy. She drank, and the others followed suit, in grim silence. Zixthara was drunk now. The bottle was half empty, and her 4 hands moved unsteadily. But her voice was clear. The memories were too sharp for alcohol to blur them. You think those stories were bad? She leaned forward. Those were just the beginning. Small encounters. Individual humans. What came next was humanity as a species. She poured drinks for everyone at the table. Year 2 of the war. The hegemony was winning. We controlled 12 human systems. Billions of humans under our rule. The human military was scattered. Broken. Running. Scared. Our intelligence reports said humanity would surrender within months. Maybe weeks. Zixthara laughed bitterly. Intelligence. What a joke. We didn't understand anything about humans. She took a long drink. The counteroffensive started on New Year's Day. Human holiday. They picked the date on purpose. 12 systems. 12 separate attacks. all perfectly coordinated, all happening at exactly the same time, across hundreds of light years. The other aliens looked confused. "How is that possible?" asked a Vorthan officer. "Communication across that distance takes days, even with quantum relays." "Exactly. That's what we thought too. It should have been impossible to coordinate attacks across such distances with split-second timing." Thara's eyes grew distant. "But humans had been planning this for months, maybe years. While we thought we were conquering them, they were preparing their real war." She stood and began pacing again. "Every human ship we had captured and studied, they let us capture them. Every piece of technology we thought we had reverse-engineered, they wanted us to have it. While our scientists were studying human engines and weapons, human scientists were studying our scientists, learning how we think, how we analyze, how we plan." The ships that hit us on New Year's Day looked like the same old human cargo vessels we had been destroying for 2 years. Same design, same energy signatures, same apparent weaknesses. Thara stopped pacing and faced the table. But inside, they were completely different. Hybrid technology, human innovation, combined with hegemony engineering. They took our own weapons and made them better. Our sensors couldn't tell the difference until it was too late. What looked like a weak human freighter was actually a stealth battleship with firepower that could crack a moon. She sat down heavily. The Battle of Wolf 359 was the worst. I was there, commanding a heavy cruiser in Admiral Vextar's fleet. We had 50 ships, the humans had 12. We should have destroyed them easily. Thara's voice became quiet. The human fleet just sat there as we approached. No evasive maneuvers, no defensive formations, just floating in space like they were waiting for something. Arne. Admiral Vextar was suspicious, but our orders were clear. Destroy all human ships. We opened fire from maximum range. She poured another drink. That's when we learned about human psychological warfare. Every human ship started broadcasting on all frequencies. Videos, audio recordings, documents. All the evidence they had been collecting about hegemony war crimes. Footage of the New Harmony massacre. Audio of civilians screaming during orbital bombardments. Military reports describing genocide protocols. Thara's voice cracked. But they weren't broadcasting to us. They were broadcasting to our subject species, the Zalani mining crews, the Vorthan tech workers, the Keth farmers who had been conquered generations ago. A Zalani officer at the table went pale. "They showed everyone what you had done to us." "Yes, everything. 200 years of oppression, slavery, murder, all documented. All broadcast across the entire hegemony at the same time." Thara drank deeply. The human ships were destroyed, of course. We had superior numbers. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. Within hours, subject worlds across the hegemony started rebelling. Centuries of suppressed anger exploded all at once. The humans had been secretly contacting our slave species for months, providing weapons, training, coordination. While we focused on fighting human ships, humans were building an alliance of everyone we had ever oppressed. She looked around the table. That was the real human strategy. They weren't trying to defeat us militarily. They were trying to free everyone else. The humans lost that battle at Wolf 359. All 12 ships destroyed. But they won the war. The hegemony started falling apart from the inside. Thara stood again, swaying slightly. But even that wasn't the most terrifying part. "Want to know what scared me the most?" The aliens nodded, though they looked like they didn't really want to know. "The human admiral at Wolf 359. Sarah Chen. She broadcast a personal message to every hegemony ship before the battle started. She said she was sorry it had come to this. Sorry for the lives that would be lost. She said humans didn't want to destroy the hegemony. They wanted to free it. Dama, Dama, Dama. Zixthara's voice became a whisper. She meant it. Even while her people were dying, even while we were killing them, she was genuinely sorry for us. That's when I realized the truth. Humans weren't fighting us out of hate or revenge. They were fighting us out of love. Love? A Keth soldier sounded confused. Love for freedom. Love for justice. Love for people they had never met, but knew were suffering under our rule. She sat down again. They were willing to die not just for their own species, but for every species the hegemony had enslaved. They saw the galaxy not as territories to conquer, but as people to liberate. Zixthara finished her drink. After Wolf 359, the war changed. It wasn't the hegemony versus humanity anymore. It was the hegemony versus everyone else. And humans had shown everyone else how to fight back. The rebellion spread to 1,000 worlds. The hegemony fleet was scattered, trying to put down uprisings everywhere at once. We were fighting ghosts and shadows, while our empire burned around us. She looked at each alien around the table. That was my fourth lesson about humans. They don't just think tactically or strategically. They think generationally. While we planned battles, they planned the future. They weren't just fighting a war. They were building a new galaxy. Zixthara poured the last drops from the bottle. And the most terrifying part? It worked. Everything they planned, everything they sacrificed for, it worked. She raised her empty glass. To Admiral Sarah Chen, who taught us that humans don't fight to conquer, they fight to liberate, even their enemies. The toast was drunk in silence, each alien lost in their own thoughts about what they had learned about humanity's true nature. Zixthara sat quietly for a long time. The empty bottle stood between her and the other aliens, like a monument to the stories she had told. The tavern had grown quieter as other patrons left, but no one at her table moved. "That's not the end," she finally said. "The worst part came after the war was over." Her voice was different now, softer, almost confused. The hegemony fleet was broken. Our empire was in ruins. Subject worlds were free, and hunting down our surviving ships. We had maybe a dozen vessels left out of thousands. She stared at the table. Admiral Sarah Chen found us hiding in the Void Nebula. One human fleet against what was left of the greatest military power in the galaxy. We prepared to die fighting. It was all we had left. Honor in battle. Death before surrender. Zixthara looked up at the other aliens. Chen hailed us personally. I was on the bridge when her message came through. I'll never forget her face. Every nother. I'll never forget her face. What did she say? Asked a Zelani officer. She asked us to surrender. But not the way conquerors usually ask. She said she knew we were afraid. That we had been taught the galaxy was a dangerous place where only the strong survive. Zixthara's voice cracked slightly. She said, humans wanted to show us a different way, where strength meant protecting others, not dominating them. She offered us amnesty, full pardons for any soldier who laid down their weapons, jobs in the new Terran Alliance, homes on free worlds, protection from revenge seekers. The tavern was completely silent. My admiral spat at the screen, called her weak, said humans were fools for showing mercy to their enemies. Zixthara closed her eyes. Chen just smiled. Sad smile, like she was sorry for him. She said mercy wasn't weakness, it was strength. The hardest kind of strength. Stronger than hate, stronger than revenge. She gave us 3 hours to decide. What did you do? Whispered a Vorthan soldier. I was just a commander then, not my choice to make. But I watched my admiral and the other officers debate. Half wanted to fight and die with honor. Half wanted to accept the human offer. They argued for 2 hours. Zixthara opened her eyes. Then Chen sent us another message. Video recordings from the Terran Alliance. Former hegemony soldiers working alongside humans. Building new colonies. Protecting trade routes. Living free lives. She showed us Keth warriors training human children in combat techniques. Zelani engineers designing ships with human scientists. Vorthan artists creating beauty with human poets. Not slaves, not prisoners, partners, equals. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. My admiral broke down crying. Proud Keth warrior, veteran of 100 battles, weeping like a child. He had expected death, expected slavery, expected punishment for everything we had done. Instead, humans offered us forgiveness, hope, a future. Zixthara turned back to the table. That's when I understood what humans really are. They're not just warriors or strategists or protectors. They're healers. They see broken things and try to fix them. Broken people. Broken societies. Broken galaxies. She sat back down. 3/4 of our fleet surrendered, including me. The humans kept their word, every promise, every guarantee. I spent 6 months in human custody. Not in a prison, in a rehabilitation center, on Earth itself. Learning human history, human philosophy, human ways of thinking. Zixthara's voice became wonder-filled. Earth is beautiful. Blue skies, green forests, clear oceans. But the most beautiful thing was watching humans interact with former enemies. Hegemony soldiers working in human farms. Keth children playing with human children. Former slave species and former master species building a new civilization together. No revenge, no punishment, no second-class citizenship, just integration, healing. She looked around the table. That's my 5th and final lesson about humans. They're the most dangerous species in the galaxy because they make enemies into allies. They turn hate into love, fear into hope. They're terrifying not because they can destroy you, but because they can change you, make you better than you thought possible. A movement in the corner of the tavern caught everyone's attention. A figure in a simple uniform had been sitting quietly through all 5 stories. Now he stood and approached their table. Human, young, dark-skinned, with calm eyes and a gentle smile. "Excuse me," he said in perfect Keth. "I'm Lieutenant Taurus, Terran Alliance Defense Force. I couldn't help but overhear your stories, Commander Zixthara." The aliens at the table tensed. How long had he been sitting there? How much had he heard? Zixthara stood slowly. "Lieutenant, how much did you hear?" "All of it. From New Harmony to the surrender in the Void Nebula." His smile didn't waver. "Thank you for the accurate assessment." The other aliens stared. This human had listened to himself and his species being described as terrifying killers. And he was thanking her? "Accurate assessment?" asked a Zelani officer, nervously. Torres nodded. "Commander Zixthara understands us better than most. Humans are dangerous. We are scary. We will do terrible things to protect what we love." He looked around the table with those calm, patient eyes. "But we're also capable of mercy, forgiveness, love. Sometimes, that's even scarier than our capacity for violence." He offered a slight bow to Zixthara. "We're honored to serve alongside warriors like you in the Alliance. Your experience and wisdom make us all stronger." Torres walked back to his corner table, ordered a drink, and continued reading his datapad as if nothing had happened. The aliens sat in stunned silence. Finally, a Keth soldier whispered, "He was here the whole time, listening to us talk about how terrifying his people are, and he just thanked you for it." Zixthara sat down heavily. "That's what humans are," she said quietly. "They're the species that will sit calmly, while you described their most frightening qualities. Then thank you for your honesty. They're the most beautiful and most terrifying thing in the galaxy. They can kill you with garden tools or save you with kindness. They can turn your own virtues against you or teach you virtues you didn't know existed. She looked at each alien around the table. And the most terrifying part? They don't even realize how scary they are. To them, everything they do is just normal. Just being human. In the corner, Lieutenant Torres finished his drink and left quietly. The aliens watched him go in silence. When he was gone, Zix Thera spoke one last time. That's why I still have nightmares. Not because humans are monsters, but because they're not. They're something far more complex and dangerous than any monster. They're people. Just people. Who happen to be capable of anything. She stood to leave. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have an early shift tomorrow. The Alliance is sending me to help establish a new colony. Mixed species. Humans and Keth working together. Still scared of them? Asked a Vorthan officer. Zix Thara paused at the door. Terrified, but also hopeful. Because if anyone can build a better galaxy, it's humans, even if they scare the hell out of me while doing it. She walked out into the night, leaving the other aliens to contemplate what they had learned about the most dangerous and most compassionate species in the galaxy.